Hello! Future Ben here, and before we get started on tonight's video, I have a major announcement. In less than 2 weeks, I'll be hosting my debut novel launch party. Falling Through comes out on Saturday, August 6th, and so I'll be hosting a live stream that day at noon Eastern Time. There will be games, there will be prizes, I'll be giving away stickers, magnets, bookmarks, gift cards, and signed books, as I celebrate all things Falling Through and the 10+ year journey it took to get here. Mark your calendars, and I hope to see you there. Hello! I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write, where I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors. Today's topic has to do with a term from my work life known as the definition of done, which applies to manuscripts and the publishing process. Well, for work, how do clients know that an application is finished and ready to be deployed? That is a moving target, and one which I spent years guiding people to building processes that find the answer. The application should go through a rigorous series of tests so that it doesn't only fall on the client to accept the deliverable merely because it was presented at the end of the scheduled period. That's because a client can be easily fooled by pretty demos and an ethically corrupt development team who wants to pass off the application to someone else as quickly as possible, where it then becomes someone else's problem. Switching to writing, from the moment we type the end in our manuscripts, if that's how you choose to end your stories, what is stopping us from publishing right then? In much the same way as delivering an application, there should be a series of checks to validate that a manuscript is ready to be published, at least with a certain degree of certainty. These checks are more for self-published authors, as traditionally published authors tend to hand off their manuscripts to their agents and publishing houses, so they have less control over the is it done decision. Here are 5 ways to know whether or not a manuscript is ready to be published, or if it needs to go back to a revision stage. Number 1, we don't. There's no bell that dings when the manuscript is ready or recipe that we follow to know that it's fully baked. When we get to the end of a story, or honestly before then, we can publish at any time. Granted, uploading an unfinished and unedited work is guaranteed to be a story that no one wants to read. The exception to publishing these unfinished stories is when you're doing serialized storytelling, where you may publish a chapter each week. Even then, those chapters and small segments of a greater whole are still edited until a self-contained and complete story. Although we can publish the moment we complete a draft, that should be the minimum bar to entry. This decision rests solely at the author's discretion. As someone who's gone through 10 complete rewrites of my story, no one is telling me whether or not I can or cannot publish, except me. How can we be sure? Number 2, self-edits. Have we read and reread our manuscripts? Have we read it out loud or had a program read it to us and not trip over the dialogue or page-long sentences that go on and on and on and never feel like they're going to end until they do, but by then it feels like a run-on sentence, which should have ended at a quarter of its length, and... where was I? Right. Self-edits. Do them. Read the story out loud. Find troublesome spots. Fix them. Rinse and repeat. Number 3. Reviewers and professional editors. Has more than one person read the manuscript? There's no minimum number of second sets of eyes that are needed to declare it as done. I won't lie though, going through this process and getting feedback and possibly harsh criticism, it sucks. If every beta reader stops and says that a book needs major rework, then it's probably time to listen to opinions we don't want to hear and fix underlying issues. Then again, beta readers are not an exact science, and the percentage of ghosting or comments which don't apply feels abnormally high. I would recommend getting a group of 4 trusted beta readers and then building a larger group of random beta readers around that. These are trusted readers, so I would want them to tell the truth even if it's going to hurt, and this can help identify and eventually resolve fundamental flaws. That way we can tell our trusted group where other readers had issues within the story and get a second opinion on whether or not they think an issue exists. In addition to volunteer help, manuscripts should be reviewed by professionals whose job it is to edit and improve stories. This will drastically raise the price needed to publish, but the benefits far outweigh the cost. I've read books where the entire plot and character motivations fall apart under the lightest scrutiny. their professional should have worked with the author to address these underlying issues, and possibly rewrite the entire novel. I've also beta read manuscripts before they were sent to professionals, and arced the novels when they were done. The differences were astounding. Scenes were made clearer, characters were funnier, and the stories made more logical sense. It's not an exact equation, but the more people who look at a draft and offer suggestions to improve it, the better it will be. There will be diminishing returns in time and effort, as well as incorrect comments which should be ignored. Trust your instincts to know how many critique partners, beta readers, and professional editors are needed, and whether to change the draft based on their comments. If time and cost are significant factors, then weigh them against the potential quality of the next draft. Much like how the author decides when their manuscript is ready, they also need to determine when they're done getting help. Number 4, the sleep test. I read books in bed. It is a relaxing way to close out my day. I enjoy most of the books I read. That means I want to reach a solid break before I close the book and go to sleep. If I'm falling asleep every time I'm opening a book, it probably means that something's not adding up for me. The story may be lacking, the characters may be selfish trash, and the major reveal may have been obvious since page 1. When I easily choose to close a book, that fails the sleep test. However, if I'm reading and I perpetually say just one more page, just one more page, just one more page, despite being physically exhausted, that passes. Thanks to my Kindle's estimate on how many minutes are left in the chapter, most nights end with me making complex calculations on how tired I'll be in the morning versus whether or not I can make it to a good breaking point. For those who value a full night's rest and don't want to do the sleep test, this can be altered to the shining moment. All of my favorite stories have one thing in common. They all have a shining moment. The story may have a strong emotional peak which resonates with me, or a swampy middle which I feel lasts too long. But when I finish these stellar books, there will always be at least one scene or event which I can point to and say, I will never forget this. I picked up books again to reread, and though I may have forgotten characters or major plot events, I can still recall each of those shiny moments. Wheel of Time is a great example. I remember almost nothing from the first book, and there were several characters in the show who made me question whether I actually read the book it was based on. Yet there were some standout moments in the show which were directly plucked from the book, and I remember reading even after a decade and millions of words read since then. And lastly, number 5. We don't. I'll say this again, there is no way of knowing that a manuscript is ready for publishing. We can spend years writing and rewriting it in a labor of love. Or we can do a first draft, do a quick pass, and put it out in the world. My process was slow for my first manuscript, but it is accelerating for books 2 and 3 as I learn from my mistakes. We shouldn't be expecting perfection from our manuscripts because they won't be. Instead, we should focus on being happy and proud of the words on the page. Those are my 5 tips to know when a manuscript is ready to be published. No matter what, the effort of completing a manuscript is worthy of praise, a pat on the back, and if you choose to partake, a nice beverage. I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write. If you enjoy my thoughts on the pre-publishing process, please press those like and subscribe buttons. Let me know in those comments how you know your manuscripts are ready. Do you agree with my opinions, or is everything I said wrong? I post my running and writing progress on Instagram and Twitter as Running to Write, so be sure to follow me and join in with your own thoughts. Do you want regular updates on my trials and tribulations? Then do I have news for you. I've started a monthly newsletter to keep you all informed of my writing milestones, as well as whatever else is going on in my life. Feel like getting more of my wit and musings? Then please sign up. I'll include a link in the description below. See you next time. Until then, decide what it'll take to be comfortable with publishing your work in progress.